Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Afshon Gigi. I'm a techpreneur, founder of a couple of startups, one of them called Afri Delivery, another one called Afri Supermarket. And I also run a podcast called Mentorship Uncomplicated. And I have a bunch of guests coming in where we have discussions about entrepreneurship. And through these conversations, I normally get a lot of questions that I'm not able to answer then. So I've been compiling them, and I figured I might just address some of these questions. Please note that my feedback is strictly based on my experience and how I have tackled some of these issues that you guys are about to send out or you're sending out. So I'm not just giving general advice. This is tailored to my situation. And I hope that if you get something from it, you will also tailor it to whatever situation you might be going through. I normally tell people I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to share my story. And then based on that, you can decide whether it works for you or not. So the first question of the day is, how do you manage to stay motivated and keep things going even when they're not working your way? So I normally say this, motivation is overrated, discipline is underrated. The reason why I say this is because as you build whatever you're building, you'll find that motivation dies off at some point, and the thing that keeps you going is discipline. And like, for example, I do probably more than 50% of the things I do them even if I don't feel like doing them or I don't want to do them, but I do them regardless. And that's where discipline kicks in. So that's what I do. So if I was to just depend on motivation, man, I wouldn't get anything done. So that would be my simple answer to that question. The second one is, what was the first thing you invested in your business? People, in brackets, human resource, or assets? So in brackets, car, good laptop, motorbikes, etc. I want to understand what factors should determine or guide spending to ensure you don't spend on things that do little or nothing for business growth. E.g., do I need a fleet of delivery bikes or do I need 20 salespeople? Good question. Tough question because it depends on the business that you're running. But for my case, what I did is I had to strike some sort of a balance. And one thing I noticed is even when I was trying to raise capital or looking for money, I used to think that I needed to raise money just for the fleet of the bikes, but I forget that these fleets or these assets that I'm buying have to be operated by people, and that's where working capital comes in. So I would say that you probably need to strike a balance because everything has to go with the other. So I cannot just say that just buy the assets and they sit there. They need to be operated by human beings. So you might need to also be able to get people to do that job. So I think my advice to you will be strike a balance. Don't get more than you need of either. Just get what you need at that time and then grow as you go. But don't forget, they both go together. Number 3, as a tech startup in Zambia, what 3 things should you focus on in the beginning for successful market penetration, and what should you avoid wasting time on? Number 1 is understanding your consumers. I always tell people you need to understand the person that you're selling to, especially in such local markets where in many cases the tech products you're trying to introduce are new. So everything that we're doing in tech at this particular point is probably new to the population. So you need to understand, do a bit of research, speak to a few guys, create some focus groups and discuss your ideas and so on before you can really go out on your idea. The other one is building strategic partnerships. Building strategic partnerships is very important for a startup because that's one of the cheapest way for you to grow. The reason why I say that, for example, in our case, when we started with food delivery, we never had marketing budgets. But what we did is our partnership with the restaurants made sure that they were able to advertise us by them advertising delivery. So they would say, okay, if you want to get your food delivered, use our free delivery. And that's how we grew. And then eventually our biggest strategic partnership was when we partnered with Chilanga, and that partnership came with so many people. It came with Zambia Breweries, it came with a bunch of people, it came with Coca-Cola, it came with all these guys. And through these big major organizations, we're able to ride on their marketing, because they would say, okay, we're pushing this initiative, and of course we're being mentioned there. So I think that's also something very, very key. And another one is customer education. So you need to really take time and educate your customers on what you're trying to build, because like I mentioned, in whatever you're trying to launch or to introduce to the market, in many cases you're either the pioneer or it's still a very, very new industry when it comes to tech products. So you find yourself talking about your product every now and then, and I would encourage you to keep doing that. So if you're able to get through that phase, I think you should be fine. Next question is, how early should you ask for funding, and what type is best advised for the beginner stage besides family and friends? So how early should you start looking for funding? That's always a tough question, because it's not an easy question to answer. But I always say that you really don't need money to start. So you can always start. I mean, you'll be shocked at what you need to just start. You only need money to scale. So that's when now you start thinking, okay, I've got something here that works and I need to scale it. Then you can start looking for money. So ideally, the first go-to is your family and friends. And then from the family and friends, I don't think you can skip that stage. I don't think you can skip the family and friends and go straight to angel investors and all that stuff. Because that's the only way. Those are the guys that really believe in you. It's hard for you to just start reaching out to people, strangers, and telling them, oh, I'm thinking of idea stages, especially here, are very hard to fund. But if you're able to get an MVP through your family and friends, then you can now start going to angel investors. And then the angel investors is just a dude that believes in you and can give you a little bit of cash to keep pushing your idea forward or your business forward. But I keep telling people that, and I was discussing this with my South African colleagues, I keep telling them that your best and your most loyal investor is your customer. So that's how we grow our business. So we made sure that we paid attention to our investor, and this investor is the customer, the person that's coming to your business every day, paying for your service every day, and spending money there every day. So even in my business, I keep telling people that my team, my employees, I keep telling them that these are not customers, these are investors, because that's the only person that's guaranteed to fund your business. So if you're lucky enough to start a startup or to start a product that people like and people are using, pay attention to those people, have them introduce the service to other people or the product to other people, and grow like that. That's the only way, the easiest way to grow, to fund your business. Because funding is probably, especially now, it's very, very hard for you to get funding for your business. But if you can get a good product that you can grow slowly, and have people using, you'll be fine, you'll be set. What 3 things should you have in order from the onset to avoid later pitfalls in the system not designed for startups? And this is from experience. Number 1, compliance. These are things that we neglect, but they're very, very important. Your startup or your small company is not going to stay small forever. From the day that you incorporate your organization or your company exists. So if you become successful later, maybe 3-4 years down the line, like we did, don't forget that if anything is going to be audited, they look back since the day you incorporated, the day you started your company. So make sure your compliance is right. Otherwise, you're going to pay a very, very heavy price for it. Number 2 is financial literacy. Understand how to deal with money. That's very, very important. Understand how to separate investors' money from your personal money. How to just treat money. It's very, very important. So if you can get a co-founder that understands finance, you'll be set. I always give people the idea of a perfect crowd of founders, which is a business developer or someone that runs the business. There's the finance guy, and then there's the tech guy. So if you're able to get those 3 guys, the compliance and the legal, you can always outsource that. But if you're able to have those in your organization, you should be good. And the third one is tech that you can scale. IP is very important. So if you're a tech startup and you're building tech, it's good to try and see how you can own that technology so that you can scale it together with the business. Because I've seen a lot of people getting limited by the fact that even if your business grows, you're not able to grow your technology at the same rate. So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. Next question. How do you attract the best employees as a startup business which cannot manage to financially motivate employees because you're still funding the business as a founder? Yeah, I can relate to that. You need to be extremely good at telling your story. Like I've been very lucky to have some really, really good employees, or I don't like calling them employees, I call them my teammates, very good teammates and co-founders, because I managed to convince them that whatever I was doing made sense. But as much as you're good at telling the dream, you also need to be very good at showing them that there will be a reward at some point. So communicate the dream, the impact, the story, but also communicate the reward at some point. Once we get to this milestone, the picture is going to look like this for me and like this for you, so that they can know, okay, even if I do this for a couple of years, there's something at the end of the day. So this, and you need to be very, very honest. Don't go acting like you don't need them, because you don't need them. You don't need them a lot, more than you think. Be honest with them. Always communicate the dream with them. If you have something that you're thinking about, document this, share it with them so they can see, internalize it and process it, and make them own it. So they can understand that if this doesn't work, if I don't put in my part, then we all lose. And if I put in my part, then we all win at the end. So show the grand picture at the end, and always communicate as the steps as you go on. Next question. With reference to one of your podcasts, you talked about finding a mentor for your business. Well, I've been trying to find one already doing the kind of business, and for most, they see me as a competitor, hence pushed me away. So it said, sir. Unfortunately for me. So how do you find and attract mentors without them seeing you as a competitor? Good question. So I never really went the traditional traditional mentorship route or route. I always became friends with these people first, built relationships, and then from there I decided to ask them for mentorship. So they never really saw me as coming after their business or being too interested in their business. I was just a dude that wanted to be friends with them, and eventually that works out. But also, with the digital community opening up as much as it is open now, I don't think you have to localize your mentorships. You can easily reach out to international mentors that are based somewhere else, and you can build relationships with them, and you can use them to mentor you, especially if you're trying to build a Pan-African organization like we are trying to do. Like I don't think I'm looking for, even if I'm looking for local mentors, like my vision and my goal is really an international vision. So I try as much as I can to source for mentorship from all over the world as much as I can. But there's also a lot of information you can consume, like what I am doing here, that can act as a guide. So you don't necessarily need to sit with somebody and they tell you, oh, do this, do this, do this, do this. No, there's a lot of people that are giving out, that are producing very good content that you can consume, and it can guide you step by step as you try to build your startup. So yeah, next question. Do you think bootstrapping is better than finding a partner as a startup? So I'm assuming you're talking about a financial partner. The answer is yes. Bootstrapping is always a good idea. The reason why it's a good idea is because it gives you room to understand your business and what you're trying to build. You can take risks at that time, because the minute you start bringing in financial investors and partners, now you start gambling other people's money, and the ball game changes at that time. So bootstrapping is always recommended. It takes you through a lot of character development that you need. So it's something that actually should be mandatory. So I would recommend that if you're starting a startup, bootstrap that startup for like a good 2-3 years before you start looking for funding, because it will really help you understand your business. It will help you fix a lot of things. And also don't forget that bringing in financial partners comes at a cost. So nobody's going to give you money without taking something back from you. So if you can keep as much equity as possible but still sustain the business, good for you. Keep doing that. So I would highly advise that you bootstrap your business for some time before you can start looking for financial partners. Next question. As a business in tech products, what are the key factors to scalability, and how do we maintain a competitive advantage and yet still optimize our pricing strategy? Number one, I'll talk about how you can maintain a competitive advantage. And I always speak about this. Number one, innovation. Innovate. Innovation is very good because, first of all, if you have a small base of customers, they can see that you're trying to improve, and customers appreciate that. So, for example, if you go to one of our services, like for example, our free delivery, like we've added so many things. We just launched a new subscription product for fresh produce and meats and veggies, and this clearly aligns with the times that we're in now, where we have constant load shedding and all that. So at least instead of you stocking up a lot of goods, you just get what you need for that day, and it will be delivered to you every other day. So customers appreciate such things. Innovate, grow with your customers as much as possible. Highly advised. Number two, build a very customer-centric business. That's the easiest way to retain customers. Good customer service. I always keep telling my team that we might have the best tech that we can afford to build, but if the service is not good, you can only keep so many customers. Your churn rate will be very, very high. So build a customer-centric business, focus on your customer/investor, and keep them for as long as you can. That's the best way to sustain your business. But when you look at now unit economics, as you scale your business and you want to make it sustainable, you need to start thinking of automation, optimization, just to improve on your efficiency. Because as you scale, you need to make sure that you can afford to scale. So your overheads must not go over the roof. They must not be crazy. So you need to make sure that you're able to sustain that. And you can do that by automating as much as you can, and really pushing for efficiency so you don't waste resources. Look into that too. Eventually, whatever matters at the end of the day is unit economics. Are you making money or not? So if you're not making money, then you need to start cutting those things that are making you not make money. And now the second last question: what should we focus on so much on a startup business with regard to scalability? Good question. I think the first thing you should focus on, what I did, is product market fit. What I mean by that is, when you're building a startup, you introduce so many things, but then eventually you have to sit and analyze what is working and what's not working, and then double down on what's working. So you need, and it might take some time before you find a product market fit. I keep saying that whatever you start with, in many cases, is not what you end up with. You have to tweak it quite a bit. You have to pivot at some point. So if you're able to find a product market fit, good for you, and that's what you should focus on, what's working. I think one thing that has helped me during our scale, other than of course finding a product market fit, is the right people, the right team. I noticed that in many cases we have a team that is not able to keep up with the pace at which your organization is growing, and you need to be very good at being able to observe that and fixing it. So what that means is that you might end up using too much time trying to get people to catch up instead of you introducing new talent or new people. So it's a hard decision to make, because most of these guys you started with somehow become family. But at the end of the day, especially when you have investors there and other partners, then the business is always a priority, and you have to see to look at what works for the business. So you need to get new talent and let the old talent go if they're not able to catch up. So I think that's another thing that you have to look when you're scaling your business. Once I have a market product fit, okay, then I have to scale it. Do I have the right people to help me scale it? Because you have a product market fit, if you have a product that fits the market, it's easy for you to get funding. If you have funding, then you utilize that funding to really get good talent to make sure that you're able to keep up with that scale. That would be my advice. Finally, the last question. What should a founder do when things are going good and when things are going bad? I.e., bad sales month, key player leaves, money issues. In many cases, and I'm talking about this from experience, we do not acknowledge when things are going good. We think that the good days will last forever. Everybody is in a good mood. We're making tons of money, and we assume those days are there forever. We do not foresee we'll be having load shedding for like a year, and costs of doing business has gone up maybe 2-3 times. But then you come to learn those things through experience. And then okay, I once had a bad year and I once had a good year. So during the good year, if you're able to now start putting measures in place, like first of all, do not overhire just because you've got a lot of money around. Do not change too much unless you're really changing to fit for the betterment of your customer. Do not just carelessly increase payroll, all that stuff. Just use that opportunity to keep some reserves if you can, because you will need them during the bad days. But unfortunately, if you're going through bad days for the first time, especially as a founder who has a relationship with his team, because one thing you don't want to lose is your team. Your team needs to know what's going on. You need to be very honest with them and communicate with them, communicate. Let them know what's happening. If you're facing through some hard times, let them know that. Let them understand. And if you've built a good team, you guys can have honest conversations surrounding these areas, and it shouldn't be such a big problem. But then if it goes on for some time where you're having a bad month, 2 months, 3 months, then it's time for you to start thinking of different strategies or how to pivot, or you have to make some really tough decisions, cutting costs, letting some people go, all those things. All those are things I went through, I've personally gone through, and probably didn't make good decisions at some point. And unfortunately, I used to beat myself about it, but that is part of the process, man, and it's part of the learning. But now I know better. And especially now that I'm building a sustainable business that is able to sustain itself, so the key areas that you need to pay attention to. But always be honest with your team. I'm very honest with my team, especially my middle management teams, because I trust they will communicate this to the junior team members. So I'm not too worried about it if we have bad times, because we have bad times every now and then. But then if you see these bad times going on for a bit longer than expected, if it's not like just a seasonal thing, you might have to make some tough decisions. Eventually, if you have to, you might have to shut down or maybe start looking for alternative markets. When I say shut down, I don't mean give up. I always encourage founders to look for alternative markets because we are very comfortable just settling where we started. But Africa now, if you look at it as one global market, and that's how I've been able to probably balance our business. Like even when I'm talking to our investors or our partners, I no longer just pitch it as a Zambian business. It's an African business, and that means that if I don't have one opportunity here, I can have the other opportunity. I can have the same opportunity somewhere else. And I think by the way things are going, that will be more sustainable. So those are the tough decisions that you have to sit and think. I can talk about this topic for hours and hours and hours because I've gone through a lot of those, and I'm glad that I made the right decisions so far. But yeah, I'll keep talking about them. This is not the last session that we're having when it comes to these Q&As, but I'm glad to have contributed. and answered a couple of them. I'm sure once I put up this video, more questions will come. Before we shoot season 3 of Mentorship Uncomplicated, I will try and answer a lot of these questions. My aim is to hit 100 questions. So far I've done maybe like 20. So I'll see whether I can shoot maybe 2 or 3 more episodes. But I like the relationship that we're building here, and I like the fact that I'm able to help some of the founders that come to my channel. And as we try to figure this thing out, I keep telling my viewers or listeners that I'm also trying to figure it out. Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. So I'm just a bit bold to document what I'm going through and to document the process, so that whoever is watching can learn and maybe use 1 or 2 of the lessons that I put out. So thank you for watching. I've been your host, Wallace Afshon Gige, Techpreneur, and I'm look forward to interacting with you on the next episode. Cheers.